Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Hyperion Hub, your meeting place for all things Disney. Now your hosts.
Hello, and welcome to the Hyperion Hub. I'm John Alois, and joined by Sean Degenhart.
That's me.
And John Redling-Schaefer.
Hi there.
We like to start our show off every week with our Disney views. And this week, I want to tell you guys about a Disney documentary that's not on Disney Plus or any Disney channel. It's on Netflix, actually. It's part of the holiday movies that made us. And there's a wonderful show on there about The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's of course Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, and they talk about why it's called that, by the way. But if you've seen any of these style shows, the other ones that they have are The Toys That Made Us and The Movies That Made Us, and they're kind of a wacky way of telling the behind the scenes story of the movie. They kind of bounce around. It feels a little disjointed at times, but it's fun and it all makes sense in the end. And they did that this time with Nightmare Before Christmas. The other one that they did was Elf, not a Disney movie, but I found it interesting that it's, during the holiday season. I'm not one who considers Nightmare Before Christmas a Christmas movie. This is a debate that goes on and on the Disney boards, but I watch it for Halloween. But I did watch the documentary recently, and it's fantastic. So make sure you check it out. For many of us, our Disney foundations begin at home. And back in the days when I was a kid, the quickest and most accessible path to the world of Disney was through Disneyland Records. Our guest this week has created a wonderful website dedicated to those old vinyl discs from mousevinyl.com, and one of the co-hosts of the Mousetalgia podcast, Dave Breiland, joins us. Thank you so much, Dave.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Where did the love for these old vinyls begin for you?
Well, that's a good question. I had them as a child, much like everybody else, I think, of our age and generation, maybe older. But I distinctly remember having a Fisher-Price record player, and it was brown and plastic, kind of looked like it was supposed to be a suitcase type of portable thing. And I would throw my old records on there and listen to them. So it was a lot of Sesame Street and, of course, Disney. And it was my brother, so it was even older than me. And then he would hand them down to me. So I was always getting them kind of secondhand. But I remember just sitting on my brother's bedroom floor and just listening to them and being excited about it and wishing to be able to turn the pages myself. And then I finally got to. I was old enough that I could change, when you hear the chime, turn the page. So I think it really started there. And as I got older, we were doing live Disney stuff as we started the podcast. And I remember telling my folks, if you find any Disney stuff, send it to me. I don't care what it is, just send it to me. Don't throw it away. And they took it way too literally. I don't even want to tell you the stuff they sent me because it was kind of absurd, but it worked. And they sent me all the records that I had as a kid that they still had around. So then I had the idea of how do I save this for when my kids are old enough that they would want it. And that was kind of the birth of mousevinyl.com.
I have to tell you, I had one of those suitcase record players. Mine was the Bee Gees. How great is that?
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
That goes back
Stellar.
a while.
Stellar.
My first concert, too, by the way. How crazy.
Oh, nice.
So tell us about the website. Just the idea to be able to share this, with the world and let people kind of relive some of their childhood memories and then share it with their next generation of kids.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it was. I wanted to save this for my kids and be able to share it with others because I thought certainly other people would want this too. And I also thought people would be amazed at some of the stuff Disney was actually involved with and putting out there, and how are they condensing some of these stories down into a 24-page color, illustrated book and like a 13-minute record. Like, how do you get like the Star Wars story down to that, or how, Indiana Jones down to that? Like, there's a lot of abbreviation that happens along the way. And so I started going through and just started recording all of them. I had all the audio gear from doing the podcast, so I felt like, well, I might as well use that and a scanner, and started piecing it together, and trying to create and really focus on the see, hear, read side of the Disney records, and all of the record labels that Disney was involved with, because they also had Buena Vista Records, and there was and they also released them for some of the other brands as well, or it seems like it was almost like they got contracted to, like, hey, we want the see, hear, read record of our IP. Can you do this for us? Is my interpretation or understanding of how it kind of went about for some of these things.
Do you think that other companies and brands just came to Disney because they were kind of the go-to house? They knew how to do this and do it well?
Yeah, there were really only, from what I've seen, there's only been, I think, 2 or 3 real brands that were really doing it at any scale. And so you'll definitely see kind of the more generic versions. And I think there was like Fun Stuff was one of the brands, and but they also did, like, I think some of the, like She-Ra and He-Man and some of the kind of stuff. And then there was Disney, of course, that was doing all of the their stuff. And so I think they were the premium brand, and Disney for a long time, really going back to, if you think about Oswald, really they have decided we're going to distribute ourselves. We're going to handle this ourselves. We're not outsourcing this kind of thing. And so they became really good at doing that. And they had all the inroads at the record companies and the record stores and the contacts for all that kind of thing. So they, it was kind of a no-brainer that they would go to Disney to do that kind of, get these out there.
I think just from a technical standpoint, I can't even begin to wrap my head around what you did. I mean, to do all of that. I mean, can you even estimate hours, days, weeks, months? I mean, to physically not only prepare yourself to do this, but then to launch it. I mean, you could get lost on that webpage. It's incredible. I did get lost on that webpage.
Yeah, I was curious because, like, I'll be honest, I've been pretty negligent with the site for since probably second kid for sure, but somewhere even after having the first kid, it has, the amount of postings to it has dwindled to near zero as of the last few years. But I have over 330, it looks like, audio files that are up there. And then, the See Here Reads have the whole book scanned in there. And what you'll also notice is for the LP records, that size of a scan exceeds the size of most scanners. So I ended up having to do piecemeal, and then it actually, well, at least for the scanner I had at the time, basically required each side have 4 scans and then get stitched together. So that was fairly and you want to do it at a high resolution because you're going to have to stitch it together and everything. So, yeah, each one it would easily take, I think, the recording, it was, I think, about half an hour between recording and touch up type of thing. And then for the scanning, it was usually an hour per book, and sometimes a little bit more. And even for the larger LPs, about the same. And as far as the touch-up, that's another thing. I get a lot of interesting comments about the audio on there, where there's like, oh, you should run it through this filter and you get rid of all these pops and these hiss and stuff. And I take a little bit of it out, but some of that is like, these were toys to a lot of people. And so finding pristine copies is difficult. And even still, I like to leave that in there. To me, that's part of the nostalgia, is hearing that, the pops and the hiss and that's making it sound like the record. But so that's intentionally. Some amount of it is in there intentionally. Some of it is also like, this was the best. I have 3 copies of it, and this was the best copy that I had, and I haven't gotten a 4th copy yet to be able to record it. But yeah, and there are a lot of solutions out there where it's like, oh, I bought this record player and it has built-in USB, and I just plug it into my computer. And I didn't go the easy route. I went and got the old school stereo, that your parents probably had in their shelf of record player. And then I got a specific, there's a phono output to match, because phono output and line output are 2 different things. And so there's I forgot what it's the name of there's industry standard basically, so that you can get it from the phono output into a line output. And so I have a specific box that just does that. And then I was capturing it off of that in stereo, even when it was a mono record. Again, just trying to capture as much of the fidelity that was part of that record, just to archive it, really. Like I have all the raw recordings of all of these records as well, beyond just, the MP3 version that's up there. Like I have, higher than CD quality captures of all of the records, because I figured someday I might want to come back to this and take a different stab at it, or be able to reprocess it. And I did do that one time. Had to do a batch render of all of them. Thankfully, I had all the raw files, and I keep them around just because and with the scans too. I just don't know when I might need it someday.
I remember we didn't get our first VCR until 1986.
Nice.
So for me, these records were my ways of learning these films. I remember finding the large LP of Snow White, and it came with the book. And I was so excited because I loved to do plays and create shows and stuff when I was little. So, this record was my way to capture that story. In going through some old boxes of memories and stuff, I found a script I had typed up on my mom's old typewriter, from this record, and done costume design and set illustrations and all that. And it's just because of that record, way before the movies were available for public consumption. And like you said, that was how, we were introduced to a lot of these films.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we were the same way. I used to hold them, right in front of me like I was watching the film. But again, this is 10 years before, we got a VCR as well. So it was a way to get familiar with the stories, like you said, and to really just make this your entertainment. This is how, the kids of the 70s entertained themselves and early 80s. So, the fact that you've put those back on there, and man, yours go back to the 1950s, and you have those awesome old Mousetalgia albums and Annette albums. And the fact that they're in great shape, I don't know how you found them like that, because mine were destroyed. Like you said, we treated them like toys.
Yeah. People, you'd use them as frisbees, or you'd leave them out and they get stepped on, or they were part of a ramp for your Hot Wheels. Like who knows what they were used for? But yeah, some of them they are just in horrible shape. But usually, what I hope is one of the two things is good: the book or the record. If both things are, that's like gold. But I usually expect. When I'm looking at the eBay listings, I'm usually hoping that at least one of the two things is solid, and the rest, just go with what you get.
My favorites were the old Little Golden books, Saggy Baggy Elephant and Pokey Little Puppy and stuff like that. And I loved all the Disney films as well. Did you have any that you zeroed in on as a kid? Did you have some favorites? Those old ones, I think. So there's the Tugboat one, as I recall. I think that was one of the ones that I really liked. And I don't know that it was, I can't remember if it was actually part of the Little Golden Books, but I would say the Alice Bluebonnet one is another one of my favorite ones that are kind of one of these older stories that were part of the See Hear Read.
The Mother Goose nursery rhymes. I think I can still hear Goofy saying, "This is the way the farmers ride." So it's just, those are ingrained into my brain, and it's fun to be able to share that with my girls now too.
You're a part of the Mousetalgia podcast along with your wife, Becky, and former guest of the show, Jeff Bam, and Kristen Pfeiffer. You're a co-host with your wife for over a decade now. At least that's how long I've been listening. You have such a great dynamic, all four of you guys. Tell us about your experience. I understand you had some sort of radio background when you first came in, and how did that all come to be?
Yeah, so that's kind of funny. So in high school, our high school was fairly tech forward and progressive, and they decided they wanted to do an internet radio station. And this was in the days of Real Player 1. It was actually, they started the process before 1.0. Before Real Player 1.0, it was like Real Player 0.8 or something like that. It was like beta, basically. And they decided they wanted to do an internet radio station. They actually started off, we were broadcasting on campus too, but they wanted, okay, let's go bigger and let's broadcast this over the internet. And so I was part of the team that helped get this, and we got a plaque from Real, whether it was true or not, but it was the first high school radio station in the world to broadcast 24 hours a day live over the internet. And so, we were pretty proud of that. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I was part of that. I also did DJ on top of it. So it was, and took the radio class. There was a radio class. So that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that a lot. But I also did like, the soundboard at church when I was in junior high and high school. And after college, my roommate was in a bunch of bands. And, well, I mean, I think every musician is in at least two bands. There's always their solo project, and then there's the band, right? It's like, so he was doing that kind of thing and rotating through bands and such. And so I started buying gear because I had kind of this music background and of kind of on the tech side. And so I started acquiring all this gear. And then he got married and went off down a different path. And eventually I got married. And meanwhile, all this gear is just sitting in the closet, getting dust. And my wife, Becky, was like, when are we going to get rid of this? We got to get rid of this. We don't need this. It's just sitting there taking up a lot of space, because I have 3 8U racks of gear, which is a combination of like recording and live effects stuff. So like it's not a small amount of gear. It was taking up a good portion of a closet. And then, Becky switched schools and started teaching with Jeff's wife. And we went over to, well, actually, there's a funny story. Actually, it was while before that, we went over to a house for a costume party. And here was this house that had just tons of Disney stuff all over the place. And we're like, wow, this person really likes Disney, like really likes Disney. And then, it was like 2 years later, we ended up back at his house and having dinner at his house, and that was Jeff's house. And it was, Becky happened to also be friends with like his wife's cousin or something like that. So, who was house sitting the house that we had this costume party at. So it was kind of a weird, funny thing. But so we started hanging out and talking with them. And one night after dinner, Jeff was like, hey, I'm throwing this event down at Disneyland for this website I do, Doom Buggies. Like, it's a lot of money, but if you guys want to come, you can come. Like, it's up to you. And so we were like, yeah, we'll go. We'll do it. We didn't have kids. We had, discretionary income, and like, we were up for a party and doing something else. And so we ended up going into Jeff's, I think it was the 13th or 14th anniversary of his Doom Buggies website. And I remember before we left from that trip, we decided to get annual passes. Like, we both had grown up. I had gone to Disneyland a bunch as a kid, and she had gone to Disney World a bunch growing up. And so it was kind of like, yeah, why haven't, well, I know that's a whole nother story of why we hadn't been there before together, but we decided to get annual passes. And then we started, continued to hang out with Jeff, and was like, hey, I've been thinking about doing this podcast thing. I was like, hey, I got this gear. We're good to go. He was like, oh, okay. Well, we're running out of excuses not to do this podcast that he and Kristen had been talking about. And we actually had met Kristen and hung out with her as well at that point. And the next thing you know, we're doing a podcast. And that was we released the first one in August of 2008.
Yeah, and you guys have done so much. You've accomplished so much in that time frame. What's the most exciting thing you think you've been a part of through the podcast, through Mousetalgia?
That is a big question. There is just it's so like there's been so many high points and so many magical moments where it's like magical really is probably an overused term in our fandom, but it really I don't know how else to describe it. Like when we were on episode 3, I think it was, when Margaret Carey came over to our house and had brunch with us while we then interviewed her, like it was like, what's happening right now? Like, and like, how did this happen? Or, being in line for the Haunted Mansion with Bob Gurr and, Neil Patrick Harris, or, like there's this, how do you explain this, I think though that, one of the high points, I think, where I feel like it almost like where do we go from here, was when we hosted the Tahitian Terrace dinner in Disneyland with Imagineers, and like you have Tony Baxter being the +1 for somebody that you invited, like, so like, and Kevin Feige's brother's there, and like Bob Gurr, and like it's just. And they're just in the audience. They're not even the ones up on stage, So like that was one of those, how did we do this? How did we get here? And how do we ever top this? And I mean, part of it is we've had a hard time coming up with an idea that would top it. We've got ideas, but it's, as you can imagine, topping those it requires a lot of effort and Disney's approval to do. So we have yet to do it. But I think hosting the Tahitian Terrace, a night of Tahitian Terrace in the original location, that was probably been one of the peaks of being a podcaster.
Well, and that's the interesting part to me, is that you hit this peak. All right, where do you go from here? What reinvigorates you? I think we talked with Jeff about this a little bit, is, there's this, almost game that, even John and Sean and I play, is we don't want to drop the ball here. We don't want to miss the next episode. What is it? Is it the goal of trying to outdo yourself, or just the joy and love you have for podcasting on Disney related topics that does reinvigorate you? 12 years is a long time. What drives you?
Yeah, really, it's those are very invigorating, those events, whether it's either it's the expo or it's one of these events that we throw or a meetup, those are all very like energizing, and I always feel super energized after those. But the thing that I would say that really keeps me going is just often enough we get these emails that were like, I was in a really dark place and you really helped me get through this, and I just can't thank you enough for, please keep doing what you're doing. And I see those emails, and those are the things that keep me going. It's like, all right, I'm actually maybe making the world a better place. Like I impacted this one person's life, and that's enough. I got to keep going, because I don't know how many ones that we're not getting the emails about, but we are impacting them. We're somehow bringing the little joy into the world, making the world a little bit better of a place. And I think, hopefully that's most people's goal in life, is to make the world a little bit better. And I think that's really what invigorates me, is when I see those, is like, well, I can't let them down. I can't miss out on the opportunity to help that person, somehow make it through that day, that week, that year, whatever it is. But yeah, we don't get them, it's not like a weekly thing, but we get them just often enough, a few times a year, where it's just like, all right, yep, we got to keep doing this. We got to keep going.
Excellent.
You guys, you close out, and you in particular close out every show with Carpe Kingdom. What is the significance behind that? How did that come about for you guys? Can you please explain the meaning?
Yeah, we get a lot of questions about that one. I mean, first we always get, like, how do you pronounce our podcast name? Because until you hear it, it's like Bob Gurr pronounced it Mousetalgia, and it's like, well, okay, we're an Italian podcast, but sure.
If Bob Gurr said it, you should have just changed it to that.
But Carpe Kingdom was another one of Jeff's brainchilds, and it was really kind of a play on Carpe Diem, which is seize the day. And if you've ever seen Dead Poets Society, you know that that's That's a thing. And so it's really a play on that. And it's more of like seize the magic. Like hopefully you can somehow find magic in your everyday and somehow bring a little bit of that Disney magic, find that Disney magic wherever you are, whatever you're doing. You don't have to be at a Disney park, but like look for it, find it, and seize it, and like, use that as kind of a basis to kind of keep you grounded in the Disney fandom, I guess.
You have a favorite spot in Disneyland. There's a sign that you take a picture of every time you walk under that train station tunnel.
Yes. I have it above the door to my office. It says, "Here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy."
Perfect. What is it about that? What is it about Disneyland? What is it about this creative world of fantasy that you love so much and you share with your family and your friends and the world through your podcast?
The sign is just, it's the sign that you are, and I think it really describes it well. Like you're leaving this world that you came here with, whatever's on your shoulders, holding you down, pushing you down, and you're walking into this fantasy world where things are nearly perfect. And, everything's been thought about in great detail, and everybody is there to have fun. Everybody wants to have fun. Everybody there is have fun, and everybody that's working there is trying to make fun. And just walking down that main street, like I can feel a lot of my worries, my stresses just leave. Like it's almost almost a spiritual kind of thing. Like I don't worship at the Church of Mouse, but I do feel like it is just like I feel that just relaxation come over me, and this excitement come upon me about being there. And I don't even have to go on a single ride. I don't have to eat a single churro. But if I just going down Main Street, it makes me feel that way. And that sign is my reminder that this is where I'm at and this is what's about to happen as I walk under that tunnel and hit Main Street.
I think we all feel that way.
Well, like I said, we're nostalgic for the past, and we can all enjoy those records on Mouse Vinyl and the current shows on Mousetalgia. And can I borrow the line?
Yes.
Carpe Kingdom, Dave. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to give everybody our schedule for the remainder of the year. Next week, we will have our Disney Christmas episode, and following that, a year in review. And then we'll take a few weeks off. Until then, remember to hit subscribe on whatever podcatcher you listen to us on so you never miss a show. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
We're glad you could join us. We'd love to hear from you. You can email or send us a recorded audio message at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. Find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Hyperion Hub is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or its subsidiaries. We'll meet you next time at the Hyperion Hub.